It's 2024, and if you want to get your shit together in your business, then you need to mind the gap. Right now, you can grab an early bird bonus when you enroll in my digital bookkeeping course, Mind the Gap. Visit my link tree in the show notes to enroll, and you'll be invited to book a one-on-one virtual call with me. We're going to strategize and set you on the path for financial success in your business. This call is free for new students of Mind the Gap, and it's currently a $500 value. The course will be available starting in May 2024, but don't wait to grab your free bonus and get into our online community. Everyone who enrolls in Mind the Gap right now will receive an exclusive invitation to join our virtual community. I'm going live in there twice a month to teach you valuable financial content, answer your business questions, we're co-working together, and you'll be able to network with other entrepreneurs who are doing this work too. All of my clients are there already, and we're so excited to meet you. Visit the show notes to get enrolled in Mind the Gap today. All right, welcome everybody to an episode of Money Through Ease. I have Aeoliana Elliott today with Top Shelf Virtual Services to talk to us about podcast strategy and marketing for your business. So please tell us, who are you, what you do, and about your business.
Yes, thank you for having me, Reagan. So like you said, my name is Aeoliana and I own Top Shelf Virtual Services. And outside of that, I am a mom, I'm a wife. I am originally from Puerto Rico, but have called Florida my home for well over 20 years. I was a paralegal, and now I do on the side podcast strategy. I've done VA work, I've done podcast management, and just really like helping people maneuver through the mindset and get over the burnout and the overwhelm that comes with podcasting. Because when a lot of us get into it, we don't really know what we're getting ourselves into.
Yeah.
How much work it is, and how time consuming it is, and how easily it is to burn out with it, even though it's something we really want to do. So I try to help my clients focus on taking a break, taking time for themselves, self-care, mindset, all of those things, so that they can have a thriving podcast and still enjoy the life they have.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thanks so much for sharing your story, for being on. We connected through a mutual, and I was like, do you know anybody else that wants to get on a podcast and talk? And she sent me a bunch of y'all. And I was like, okay, cool. So here we are. And you kind of help folks make that a strategy in their business. And a lot of times when people think about marketing, they're just like, oh, I just need to make sure I remember to post on social media. But what does that even look like? That takes a strategy as well. So if somebody's thinking about oh, it'd be cool to do a podcast, how can I, what do I need to consider before I make this part of my business strategy for outreach or for sales?
So the first thing, and a lot of people don't think about this, is actually it's twofold. So first, you need to make sure you have goals set up for what you want your podcast to be and to do. Second, and it goes tangent with that, is make sure that you have a clear definition of what success is for you, for your podcast, and for your business. I know a lot of us are podcast listeners. That's why we got into the space. We enjoy them. And so a lot of times we tend to compare ourselves to podcasts that have been around a lot longer, or podcasts that are already established, have a team behind the scenes. And we forget that a lot of us, when we start out in podcasting, we are solo. So we are doing the recording, the editing, the publishing, the promoting, the marketing. We're doing all of the things by ourselves. So our reach may not be as far as a podcast who has been around for 5 years and has a team of 5 to 10 people. So making sure that you define what success is for your podcast, even if it's something as simple as, my goal is to release a podcast once a week, and my success is that I get it done that way for 3 months. So I work with my clients in quarters. So we do 3 months at a time, and we evaluate what are your goals at the beginning of the three months, the beginning of the quarter, and how did you reach those goals, and where do we need to look at going into the next quarter. And I think that helps with the burnout, and that helps with the
Mm.
overwhelm, because you're focusing on smaller things rather than looking at your podcast at the beginning and comparing it to someone whose podcast is farther along than yours is.
Yeah. And I think like well, obviously people that are listening listen to podcasts. We all have those like popular podcasts that are like,
Right.
getting millions of downloads each year and like
Yeah.
everybody knows that podcast. Like and
Hmm.
comparing ourselves to that is like really not fair to us, especially if we're just
Right.
starting out.
Yeah.
And I see that that can lead to burnout as with anything else, right? That like
Hmm.
if you don't start with that clear vision of where it's going to go, what do you want it to do? Then you're going to end up burning yourself out. Asking yourself to do something like this every week is a lot to ask when you're not already doing it. So,
Right.
how do you kind of like take your folks through that? Like, what kind of expectations do I need to set for myself for like how often I want to even commit to? It's not just recording, it's not even just editing. Like you
Hmm.
said, it's the marketing and everything behind it. Like, how do we set ourselves up for success with that?
So, one of the things I like to tell my clients is to honor their energy.
Mm.
So, if you know you are someone who thrives on doing a lot of things every day, then you might, you could probably get away with doing more episodes a week versus someone who knows I only have this amount of energy for this amount of time and I can't get any more. So
Yeah.
you really need to look at, what does your schedule look like? Are you
Hmm.
able to add something in? Do you have a family? Do you have a full-time job? Are you trying to build a business? What other things in your life are going to come in and require time? And so I would suggest, start off slow. So at the beginning, if you think your energy is only allowing you to do one episode a month, then focus on that. Get that
Yeah.
ball rolling, and then you can always transition to doing more. It's
Hmm.
harder to start with more and then transition to less.
Mm.
It's easier to add than it is to subtract. I think it's like that with everything. Like, it's, when
Yeah,
you're
like
cooking and
salt in a
everything,
recipe.
yeah, like salt, sugar,
Yeah.
whatever. Like, you can always add more, but you can't take
Yeah,
it away. Um,
totally.
so that would be my suggestion. And then
Mm.
also, if you have a family, involve them in what you're doing.
Mm.
Make sure that they're aware that for this time block, and that's another thing, batching is a great
Hmm.
way to make sure that you are focusing on one thing at a time, so your brain isn't spazzing out doing 10,000 different things, which
Yeah.
as women we do anyway, but we try not to.
Yeah.
um so yeah, just have a specific day where you're recording, unless you're doing interviews, and then you can even batch interviews too. You can
Hmm.
pre-record the interviews and release them later on. I
Totally.
tell my clients, when they want to have a podcast, is, along with the goals and the defining success, write down 52 things you can talk about your topic.
Yeah.
That way, if you ever run out of ideas, you have that list to go to.
Hmm.
And with 52, like, even if you're doing one a month, with 52, you have 52 weeks of content right there that you can use.
Hmm.
Um, and then another thing is repurposing that content.
Hmm.
So you're setting yourself up for success by putting your content on different platforms. So
Hmm.
not everyone who listens to podcasts is on social media.
Yeah.
And by the same token, not everyone who's on social media listens to podcasts. So the more that you put yourself out there in different forms, whether it's social media, podcasts, YouTube, email marketing, you can take your podcast and transfer it into all these different mediums. And you're
Yeah.
saying the same thing, but
Hmm.
in different ways. So you reach different audiences at the same time.
Totally. Yeah, it's such a juggle to like make sure that we're touching everybody or like putting ourselves
Yeah.
in front of people
Hmm.
because like some people pay attention to their inbox and then I have people that tell me that they've got like 300,000 unread messages and I'm like, "Who are you? Why are you
Yeah,
doing that?"
same,
Delete.
same. I can't even, like, if my inbox has more than 5 emails in it, I'm
Yeah.
like, what is happening? Why are there so
I
many? And
start to
like,
sweat a little bit.
yeah, and like, my husband can leave email, like, he has emails in his
Yeah.
inbox from like 10 years ago. and I'm the wife who will go through his email and delete stuff. He doesn't even know. Like, he doesn't even
Mhm.
know they're gone.
Yeah. Nobody cares about 10 years ago anymore. Like,
Yeah.
especially not the promotion from Walmart that was,
Right.
it's not
Absolutely.
applicable
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
So, like, we got to make sure as business owners in any type of marketing that we're doing that, like, we save ourselves time and energy by repurposing stuff, but like,
Hmm.
understanding that everybody has their attention pulled in so many different directions.
Right.
And if you're repurposing things for email and social media, and it's all coming from your podcast, like, you're buying back a lot of your time and you're buying
Absolutely.
into like and not even like actually paying money, like you don't even have to run ads, just making sure that like your content is out there. And I think it's super important, like you said, to set that success story or what it's going to look like for you at first, because if you don't know what you want people to do, they don't know what you want them to do, like unless you're
Absolutely.
telling them.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Thanks for
never
listening, go get
realized.
on my email list.
Yeah, I never realized how much you have to tell people what to
Oh
do
yeah. Oh
until I started a business. And then it was like,
yeah.
because you think to
Yeah.
yourself, you're like, but I know what to do and I would do
Mhm.
it. But then you think you're like, but I know that doesn't mean everyone knows. And I
Yeah.
like what you said with the marketing in your business and no ads. The beauty about a podcast is that if you're running your own business, you can use that podcast as your own ads. You
Yeah.
can advertise your own things in the podcast.
Hmm.
And another great thing about podcasting is that it allows people to take back their time. So
Hmm.
rather than a video or a show or something like that where they have to sit and be present watching
Mm.
it or learning from it, on a
Yeah.
podcast someone can be doing 10,000 other
Yeah.
things and still
Driving,
listening to the
cleaning.
right and
We all
still
do it.
listening to the podcast. Absolutely.
Yeah.
My coworker and I do it all the time. Like, we
Hmm.
just listen to podcasts all day while we're at work because I still
Yeah.
work full time too.
Hmm.
And that's what I have in my ears is, and so everybody can do that. You don't have to listen to an episode live. You can go back and listen to episodes previously. You can,
Hmm.
replays, things like that. So the
Yeah.
content is always, like, I guess they call it evergreen, um,
Yeah.
where people have access to your stuff anytime they need it.
Exactly. So tell us a little bit about like what your typical day in your business, which I know you do have a day job or a full-time
Hmm.
job, and then this is
Hmm.
kind of separate. Tell us a
Yep.
little bit about like what a typical work segment, if it's not a whole day, what that looks like for you. Like what are you actually doing with your clients? Like take me through that experience.
Yeah. So I do a lot of strategy calls. So those look like my client books 45 minutes or 60 minutes or 90-minute call. And we work through whatever roadblock they're having, whatever issue they're having. Sometimes we workshop if they're getting ready for a launch. I have a program where I help people in 8 weeks to launch their
Mm,
podcast. We go
mm.
through the whole background of launching it, because one of my biggest pet peeves is when people say you can launch your podcast in 24 hours
Oh,
or in a weekend. No, you can't. um
wow.
you like, and I know what they're saying. Like, you can do all the background work, you can do all the back end work before that weekend, and then
Mm,
yeah, you can probably publish in a weekend. But
yeah.
they're not going into the specifics of all that back end work, like figuring out what platform you're going to use, figuring
Hmm.
out your equipment, I mean, iTunes alone, when you're putting a podcast on iTunes, last I heard, you have to wait like a week or two to even get approved to have your podcast
Mm.
show up on iTunes. So last time I checked, 2 weeks is not a weekend.
Yeah.
So, so we go through all of those, their cover art, their show notes,
Hmm.
how are they going to, their format for their podcast. Are they going to do
Hmm.
solos? Are they going to do interviews? What's their topic going to be? Do they have those
Hmm.
52 topics? I also do, I have a couple clients that I do Voxer support for, where
Mm.
whenever they're stuck, they just, walkie talkie me a message, and, I give them an answer on, my time. Usually my time is, I do Monday through Thursday, 5-hour blocks in the evening.
Mhm.
Because that's just what and then sometimes I'll do a weekend here and there if it warrants it, but my son
Yeah.
plays hockey, so that's where my weekends are.
Uh-huh.
But the Voxer calls, I can do those on the weekends.
Mhm.
And then I do, podcast interviews like this where I talk to, podcasters about what I do and things like that. And so that's, in a nutshell, that's how I help my clients. I also do quarterly calls with my clients where I will do a 60-minute call at the beginning of the quarter, set up their goals for that quarter, and then at
Mm.
the end we revisit what the goals were, what did they meet, how did it work out, what can they do differently, and then we set up the call for the following quarter to start up, give them about a week or so to kind of
Yeah.
rehash everything, and then we start from scratch there. So
Do it all
yeah,
over again.
yeah, do it all over again.
Yeah. Yeah. What kind of like goals? I mean, I feel like most people are going to be like, well, how do I make money? Like, if I'm going to be doing this,
Mhm.
I want to make money. Like, if you're not getting a lot of downloads, you're probably not going to get like host read ads from people that want to pay you to
Mhm.
advertise their product just yet.
Mhm.
So it may be that like you have your own ads to read, or is it going to
Right.
be downloads? Like, do most people come to you with like a specific set of goals, or do you kind of coach them through like, we need to be a little more realistic about this, or I want you to, focus on something different that we can
Yeah.
actually achieve?
Yeah. So it depends on the person. But a lot of times, like you said, a lot of people think that, like we talked earlier, because of those bigger podcasts, you think that automatically you're going to go viral and your
Yeah.
podcast is going to go viral and you're going to make tons of money. When in reality, that's not the way it works.
Yeah.
Podcasting, like blogging, like YouTube, is a long form content
Mm-hmm.
type of thing. So you need time for it to develop. It's like a snowball.
Mm.
It needs time to grow before you can
Mm.
see that. The
Yeah.
beauty of having a podcast when you have your own business is that at the beginning, you don't need to pay for ads. You don't
Mm-hmm.
need to pay for other people to be on your podcast.
Mm-hmm.
You can use your own services, your own products, whatever it is that you have, and use that for the ads. And you're getting a double whammy for it. You're going to have people listening to it for the content of your podcast and also for
Mm-hmm.
the content of what you're selling.
Yeah.
And one of the things I tell my clients too is make sure, excuse me, that when you're doing your show notes and when you're doing your descriptions and your titles, that you make sure all that is SEO optimized.
Mm-hmm.
Podcasts are now searchable through Google. So if
Yeah.
you know what keywords people are looking for and what keywords people are searching for, you're going to pop up in people's searches. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, as a solo, we're not going to pop up on the top rankings of Google because the companies and the people with the payroll have those spots, but you're
Yeah.
still able to pop up on those searches.
Mm-hmm.
And now with podcasts going onto YouTube, that's another search engine
Yeah.
that you're going to have the ability to be on and people are going to be able to find you.
Right.
So, just don't feel discouraged if things don't pan out. I'll
Mm-hmm.
give you a little stat that I learned last year, in I think it was 2022, 2023. Only a third of podcasts that get started continue past 10 episodes
Mm.
because people just burn out. They don't know what to
Yeah.
do past, like once the excitement wears off,
Mm-hmm.
you have to have, like we were talking about earlier, you have to have a reason why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to run out of steam. You're going to run out of energy. And
Yeah.
you need to know. That's why when you're in business, the first thing people ask you is, what is your why?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why are you doing what you're doing? And it has to be more than money. It
Mm-hmm.
has to be more, it has to be. The money is only going to take you so long. You have to have a reason valid to you
Mm-hmm.
specifically. Otherwise, you're not going to have anything that's going to push you through those hurdles and those obstacles.
Totally. I agree 100%. And the money, of course, like we're all in business to make money. I don't know anybody
Right.
that's like just having fun out here.
Yeah,
It could be part
absolutely.
of it, but the money is also like, what do you need the money for? Do you want to like go on a
Right.
beautiful vacation every year? Do you want to set up a college fund for your kids? Do you want to buy a bigger house? Do you want to move? Like the money is like what's on the other side of that? Like what is your
Absolutely.
motivation beyond that and really connect into that and tap into that. And I'll even, turn that question around to you. Can you share with us like what inspires you to do this work? Because you said you're a paralegal or you were a paralegal and
I was, yeah.
now you're doing podcasting strategy and like
Mhm.
what inspired that shift? What makes you get up and do what you do every day?
So it's funny you asked that. So it did have to do with my paralegal. So in
Mm.
2019, I was sick. I was in the hospital with a double kidney infection, and the
Mm.
law firm I was working for fired me while I was in the
Oh
hospital.
no.
So
Wow.
until that time, I had been like, all I knew was being a paralegal. I had been a
Yeah.
paralegal for 20 plus years. I was a probation officer for 4 years. And
Hmm.
I love that. I love that part of my life.
Yeah.
And to have something like that happen that was completely out of my control, I had to figure out what to do. And so I started working for a construction company over here in Florida. And at that time, I had been listening to podcasts for years. I love true
Hmm.
crime. I was listening to true crime podcasts. And
Hmm.
it wasn't until that shift in 2019, 2020, right before COVID,
Hmm.
where I realized that podcasting isn't just for entertainment, but we
Yeah.
can learn so much from it as well. So I
Hmm.
dove into podcasts about VA work. I did some VA
Mm.
work on the side. Um, I also did some podcast management as well, and just pivoted to podcast strategy because I learned so much
Yeah.
from the podcasting community and had so much support during that time. And it's been something that's helped me through, my mindset and, like self-awareness and things like that. And it's just been such a help to me in all aspects of my life that I just wanted to see how I could help on my end, help podcasters get their message out there, get, what they want to say out
Yeah.
there, and, not have to worry about balancing everything or not
Mm.
balancing, or having to worry about being burnt out, being overwhelmed, not having all this information and not knowing what to do with it, having a burning desire deep within them that there's something they want to share, but not feeling confident enough to go out there and share it. So
Yeah.
that's what drives me. That's what I want to be able to do. Help them. A friend of mine coined it podcast frazzled to podcast dazzled.
Nice. I love
And
that.
then I was on a podcast last night and the lady called me a podcast doula, which I thought was really
Nice.
cool. I was like, okay, so all
Yeah.
right.
You help
Yeah,
bring
okay.
it into the world.
I help bring it into the world.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. Like everybody always has such a brilliant story. And when you first meet somebody, like you just don't know who they are, like what they've been through. And so I appreciate you sharing your story and kind of like being
Yeah.
vulnerable with us on here because it is so important as business owners and entrepreneurs to have community and to like see ourselves in other people. And I think when we share those moments where we're like, I really got to pivot. Like I've been kind of
Yeah.
thrown a curveball and I need to figure something out, like recognizing that we all kind of have something like that in our
Mhm.
stories that put us in this position where we are now where we can serve other people and help other people. Like
Yeah.
it gives me, not like hope, but just like the camaraderie of like we all
Yeah.
have different stories, but we all share the kind of same experience of like, well, I need to figure this out now. So let's go do
Yep.
something to like make it work, make it happen.
Yeah. Or something needs to change. I need to do
Yeah.
something different. I've been doing the same thing for so long thinking that
Hmm.
is what I was supposed to do. And then something happens and you're like, well, I guess that wasn't what I was supposed to do. That wasn't what I was meant to do.
Yeah.
And I know for me, my husband tells me all the time, he's like, when you talk about podcasting and you talk to people about it, you
Hmm.
glow. Like you can feel that you're excited about what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I loved crime. I love true crime. It's, I would go back to it if I could,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't talk about it. I didn't feel the way I feel about
Mm.
helping people with their strategy on their
Yeah.
podcast the same way as I did about, when I was a paralegal, even though I
Mm-hmm.
loved that part of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. It's when other people can see us so clearly and more
Hmm.
clearly than we see ourselves, it's like, oh,
Yeah, yeah,
that must
all the
be the
time.
thing.
Yeah, all the time. Yeah. People tend to like it's amazing how the people around us see versions of ourselves
Mm.
that we don't allow ourselves to see.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, like you were saying with the whole community and podcasting,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's what helped so many people during COVID
Mm-hmm.
is having that outlet of I can share who I truly am
Yeah.
without having to worry about, oh, well, what are people going to think? What are people going to
Mm-hmm.
say? Because everyone was yearning for that connection. They were yearning for that community because we didn't have
Totally.
it.
Yeah. Between podcasting and social media, like probably helped all of us stay more connected and even like become more connected than we were
Yeah.
just by meeting people in real life. So
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. Like having an online community of entrepreneurs as well as like my friends and people that I know in real life that are also business owners and just like every time I interact with them, it's always like, we see each other. Like we
Yeah.
know
It's
how hard it is in
refreshing.
these streets.
Yeah. It's refreshing. We're hustling out here on these streets.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's refreshing to know that there's people that are going through the same thing that you are. And
Mhm.
then on another side, it's also encouraging because when you meet people who were at your point, where you are at one point or another,
Yeah.
and are farther along, you can
Mhm.
see yourself where they are. And
Yeah.
that's something I was talking to somebody the other day. Like the fact that the fake is no longer viable. Like
Yeah.
you cannot be fake. People's fake meter is so much
Yeah.
more sensitive than it
Mhm.
was 5 years ago.
Totally.
People don't want perfect. They don't want cookie cutter. They
Yeah.
want real. They want authentic. They want vulnerable. They want you to be a human being.
Mhm.
They don't want you to be something that you're not. They don't want you to pretend. They want us to be real. And I think that has a lot to do with the connection and the community is that it opened up so many doors for people that now, people don't want to pretend. People don't want
Yeah.
to go that route anymore.
Right. And like the fake thing or just like seeing somebody else who like that they've struggled or they've shared with you like things have not always been easy, but you see them on the other side of it and you're like, oh my
Yeah,
gosh, maybe my struggle won't last forever, because when you're in it it kind of feels that way sometimes. Like,
absolutely. Yeah,
is this
yeah,
going to be forever because I can't do this? But like seeing people who you can identify and see yourself in is like very important to be like, okay, well, they made it through. Like I think it might be the case that I will also make it through that and it will not always suck.
absolutely. Yeah, because when we're in the thick of it, like
Mhm.
we think that we're never going to get past it, and everybody's like that. And
Mhm.
it's only when you get through to the other side that you're like, oh crap, I actually did it.
Yeah.
But when you don't have access to things like that and you don't have access to seeing people that have gotten out of it, you feel like it's the end of the world when it's not. And so
Yeah.
having that's another thing that I appreciate about podcasting is the fact that so many people are represented.
Mhm.
So many different views, so many. I mean, you can literally find, I think there's a commercial where they're like the guys running through going, there's a podcast for that. There's a podcast for that. And it's funny and I love the commercial, but it's true. You can
Yeah.
literally go on the podcast platforms and search
Mhm.
anything and everything you want, and you'll find someone that's talking about it because there's other people going through it.
Mhm. One of the like things that just blew my mind was I follow like people on social media that do like arts and crafting. And then my mom has like a quilting channel on YouTube and stuff. And she listens to
Oh,
quilting podcasts. And I'm like, art podcast, craft podcast, quilting podcast. I'm like, I can't see what you're doing. How do you have a podcast where you're just talking about quilts? But it's like
it's a
you just said,
thing.
it's that there,
It's a thing.
whatever you're interested in, there's going to be a
Yeah.
podcast for that. That blew my
Yeah.
mind because I was like, listening to like the true crime things or like mostly business podcasts or kind of
Mm-hmm.
like self-help mindset podcasts
Yeah.
and some like journalism stuff. But I'm like, crafts and things like that are and art, it's like such a visual, and I'm talking about visual art. Like, how do we get on a podcast where we don't see anything and we're just listening and then we have like a whole conversation about it? It blows my mind.
Yeah.
But
But
that's
it
totally a
works.
thing.
Yeah, it is a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what you started doing podcast strategy in
Mm-hmm.
2019, early 2020.
Mm-hmm.
What, like, looking back now, I'm going to ask you to kind of like reflect back on that time period and tell us like, if I could tell myself anything in that moment, like what would I like remind myself or give myself a tip or some sort of encouragement? Because there's people that listen that have been in business for a while. There might be people listening that are thinking about starting a business. They're like, well, what do I need to know? Like, anybody got any tips?
I would say just do the thing, like take messy action.
Mm,
Um, I spent a lot of time doing something that I thought was right for me because
mm,
it was easy and it was comfortable for me. And it ended up not being the right thing for me.
yeah.
So had I just taken the messy action, because I tried entrepreneurship before and it didn't
Mm,
work out just
mm-hmm.
because I wasn't invested in it. Um, so I would say just take the messy action, try. That's the beauty of entrepreneurship is that you can try all kinds of things. And if it doesn't work, it's okay. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean anything about you as a
Mm-hmm.
person. It's just that
Yes.
particular tactic or that particular business maybe wasn't the right
Yes.
fit for you. But
Mm-hmm.
you can always pivot and go do something else. We're not corralled into doing this, having to do the same thing for the rest of our lives if that's not where our passions lie. So
Yeah.
that would be my tip is just take the messy action, try, fail, repeat. Don't be afraid of failure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we tell our son all the time, and it wasn't until my coach told me a month ago, we tell him all the time, he plays hockey. And we're like, okay, when you lose, you're not really losing. You either win or you learn. So my
Mm,
coach told me, you either get the result that you want or you get the lesson you were supposed to learn to get
yeah.
to the result that you want. So
Yeah.
it's never a failure. It's just a different way of learning. And every time you fail, figure out what went wrong. And then the
Mm-hmm.
next time you try it, change something about it to see if the outcome is different.
Yeah. I think that ties back into what you said in the beginning about like podcast strategy, like define what success means first and how
Mm-hmm.
you're going to measure it. And we've talked about that on this podcast in previous episodes. Like you need to like write some shit down and be like, if I do this, then that means good. That's what I wanted. And if that doesn't
Right.
happen, it was kind of like a science experiment. Look, we were just collecting
Absolutely.
data. Like that's all. And now we just have data. And that
Yeah.
is the entrepreneurial experiment. And like, yeah, and when you say messy action, I'm assuming you mean like we're not trying to be perfect. Like the
Absolutely.
perfectionism needs to like go out
Yep.
the window.
Yep. The days of perfectionism are over. We are not perfect.
Yeah.
We're going to make mistakes. I mean, there's going to be times where you're not going to want to record your episodes. There's going to be times when you're not going to want to publish. There's going to be times where you're going to do a podcast and you're going to listen back and you're going to be like, oh my God, that was absolute shit. Um,
Yeah.
and it's okay. All of those things are okay. And
Hmm.
sometimes you're going to have an episode where you're going to be like, this is the most amazing thing I've ever done. Like I know my coach, she said, she's like, I have a podcast where the sound was awful. I was
Mm,
sick. It was
mm,
terrible. And it's one of my most like the one of the most favorite episodes of
yeah.
all the episodes I've done
Yeah.
because she's like, because I was being real.
Yeah.
Like
That's how it works. Sorry.
that's life. Yeah, that's life. People want to see who we really are.
Yeah.
They want to have that conversation. They want to feel like they're having a conversation with you. And I had
Yeah.
someone ask me the other day, it's like, should I edit out my ums and uhs and likes and things like that? And I'm like, no. If that's how you talk,
Mm-hmm.
no.
Yeah.
No, because then if you were to meet that guest or that audience member that's been listening to your podcast and you sound different in
Mm-hmm.
person that you do on the podcast, they're going to be like, what
Mm-hmm.
the hell?
Yeah, they won't
Like,
recognize you literally.
yeah, like, are you really talking? Is that really you
Yeah.
on the podcast, or is it like AI or something?
Mm-hmm.
So, you want to make sure that you're real, and life happens. We get
Yeah.
tired, we get overwhelmed, we get sick, things happen. And
Mm-hmm.
it's okay. It's okay to take a step back. It's okay to take a break.
Yeah.
Um, all of that is okay.
Yeah. Like I don't have a lot of data on like who or which of my episodes are most listened to, but I do a lot of like videos on TikTok. I do a lot of TikTok
Mhm.
content and short form video content. And I did a video this morning where I was just like ranting for like 4 minutes about debt and like debt payoff stuff and like edited it down, posted it, was just like, all right, there's my video for the day. I checked the box, like I did it. Somebody messaged me like a couple hours later. They were like, I'm literally in tears. Thank you so much for like validating my experience
Mhm.
about this, like, solidarity. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, thank you so much for sharing this with me, first of all. And like, yeah, solidarity about like the subject at hand. But I was like, damn, like, I just got on there and ranted and was just like, cool, I'm done for the day. But you don't know how something's going to land for somebody. And
Right.
you don't want to edit yourself in that way because, like, the things that you don't even think about will be like a light bulb moment for somebody else. And you don't want to take
Absolutely.
that away from them.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. You don't like, you could be talking to yourself going, this is terrible, I shouldn't say this. And it could be the exact thing someone needed to hear
Yeah.
at the exact moment. Like
Yeah.
I strongly believe that if you have a message to share and you have something to say, no one else can say it for you.
Mm-hmm.
If you're sitting back wondering, should I do a podcast, should I not, if you have something to say and you're thinking, oh, someone else can say it better than me, you're
Mm.
doing your people a disservice, because the
Yeah.
people that are meant to hear what you have to say aren't meant to hear it from someone else. They're
Yeah.
meant to hear it from you. And if you don't share that, they're never going to hear it. And we can go as far as saying that you can change someone's life, you can save someone's life just by sharing your story,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't even know it. You may
Mm-hmm.
never know that.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a friend of mine who, when she started her podcast, and I think her podcast is in like 5 years now,
Mm-hmm.
when she started her podcast, her goal was to just help one person.
Mm.
That was it. That was her goal. She didn't care about the download. She didn't care. She just wanted to help one person with her podcast not feel so alone.
Yeah. There you
I
go.
mean, yeah, and it can, and that's simple and it's complex at the same time.
Yeah.
But it's a goal. It's definition of success. You may not know that you helped someone, but
Mm-hmm.
just having that thought every time she recorded
Yeah.
helped her push through, because you never know, maybe she is helping
Yeah.
someone and she's never going to know that, but at least she got out there, she was vulnerable, and she went ahead and did it. She did
Yeah.
the messy action.
Yes. And that's like all it is. When we say messy action, when we say stop being a perfectionist, that is what it comes down to. Like, if you're doing this in service of other people to help other people, that will come through. And if you're
Mm-hmm.
doing it for the likes or the downloads or whatever, that will come through. Like, your
Absolutely.
intention will be known.
Yep.
There's no getting around
Yep. Good or
that.
bad, people will know what your intentions are. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, can you share with us like where we can find you, how we can work with you if we want to get our podcast launched in more than 24 hours or in more than a weekend? How we can work with you, where we can find you on the interwebs.
Yes. So everything is on my website. So that's www.topshelfvirtualservices.com. And there is the link to my blog. There's all about me. You'll get to see my kid playing hockey, my husband. I have free resources there. I also have my paid resources in there. You can book a 15-minute clarity call that's completely free. You can sign up for my email newsletter. And the freebie you get is my guide to launch your podcast in 8 weeks, as well as some nice little, email newsletters that I send out here and there. I'm trying to get better with my email. But
That's another
I
one of
forget.
those messy action things.
Yeah, I forget. Like I send a lot of like, here's my blog
Yeah.
and this is what it's about. And then, like, hey, I'm in this bundle, it's free. Get yourself some stuff, but I
Yes.
send some tips and things like that. And yeah, so all my socials are on there. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I have a Facebook group, I'm on TikTok. And I'm on LinkedIn, but I'm not really in LinkedIn. I'm just there.
Amazing. I'll have all of those links and information on how people can find you in the show notes. And make sure you go follow Aeoliana and, download her free guide and everything. If you already have a podcast, you need some clarity, get with her. She will definitely help you out over at Top Shelf Virtual Services. Thanks so much for being a guest on Money Through Ease. It was such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Reagan. It was so much fun. I'm glad we connected.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of Money Through Ease. If you found value in today's discussion, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and leave a rating and review. Your feedback really does mean a lot to me. And if you're ready to take the first step towards organized finances, be sure to download my free receipt organization guide, Chaos to Calm. Visit the link in the show notes to grab your free copy now. Remember, your financial journey starts with small steps. I'm here to support you every step of the way. Until next time, this is Reagan Bashara from Money Through Ease. Stay empowered.